The Stanley Cup, a century of magic moments.
When I look at the Stanley Cup, I see names and stories. I see history, tradition, great achievement, and fun. Hello, I'm Ken Dryden, and in the next hour, we'll look at this grand old cup with its 100-year history and see again why it's one of the most coveted in sport. When I look at it, I also see lots of magic moments. I see the dreams of thousands of young people who at least once have pictured themselves at hockey's ultimate moment of triumph, hoisting the Stanley Cup. I know I was one of them. I was on 6 Stanley Cup winning teams with the Montreal Canadiens in the 1970s, but years before that, as a kid playing ball hockey in our family's backyard in Islington, Ontario, I used to try to imagine what it would be like to hold the cup high. I didn't dream alone. It's this trophy, I think, which makes hockey's championship so unique in North American sports. It symbolizes a quest that stretches from boyhood to manhood. It's the symbol of the prize. And at that one special moment, when you want nothing more than to hold on to what you feel, it's there. To touch, to share, to connect you to all those names and stories that filled your childhood that are right here, that will connect you to all those names yet to come. That's why people come here, I think, when they visit the new Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. It's to touch dreams. How did a simple silver bowl acquire such significance? The story begins in Ottawa with a British sports enthusiast, Lord Stanley of Preston.
Hockey was relatively new when Lord Stanley, who was Canada's 6th Governor-General, wrote these words from Government House in March of 1892. It would be a good thing if there were a Challenge Cup, which should be held from year to year by the champion hockey club of the Dominion. At that time, 2 of Stanley's sons, Edward and Arthur, played for Ottawa's Rideau Rebels. Believing that the Rebels were one of the best hockey clubs in Canada, the younger Stanleys convinced their father to donate a national championship trophy.
I think a large part of the appeal of the Stanley Cup was formed in its early days when the trophy was a challenge competition. At that time, any team in Canada could apply to play for the Stanley Cup. And indeed, challenges were received from various leagues, from the east and the west, and indeed from the north and the southern parts of the country. And this, I think, led to the trophy capturing the imagination of fans all over Canada.
Lord Stanley purchased a squat silver bowl known as the Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup, but almost from its earliest days, the trophy was known as the Stanley Cup. The first winner was the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association in 1893. Soon, they were joined by teams like the Winnipeg Victorias, the Montreal Victorias, and the Montreal Shamrocks. Superstar Frank McGee played for hockey's first dynasty team, the Ottawa Silver Seven, who defeated 10 Cup challengers from 1903 to 1906. Their best remembered victory came against a team from Gold Rush country.
The Dawson City Klondikers are remembered as hockey's most glorious losers. They traveled 4,000 miles to play the Ottawa Silver Seven, who then were the powerhouse in 1905. But the thing that's most interesting about them is that their challenge came at a very, very trying time, indeed almost at a time in which the Stanley Cup would slip from its position as the preeminent trophy in hockey. The Silver Seven had held the cup for several years and through several challenges, and they were the toughest, meanest bunch of SOBs who've ever played the game. And indeed, teams from other senior leagues in Canada simply didn't want to play them anymore. They felt that the deck was too stacked against them to go into Ottawa and play. And really, at the time that the Klondikers challenged, there almost was no one else willing to play the Silver Seven. So their challenge was crucial to the continuation of Stanley Cup play.
Dawson City was a mining boom town when its high-spirited hockey team set out on a 4,000-mile Stanley Cup odyssey. By dog sled and foot, they made their way to Skagway, Alaska, and continued to Vancouver by steamship. There, they rode the Ribbon of Steel to Ottawa for a 2-game series with the Silver Seven. The Klondikers were crushed by a combined score of 32-4, but their quest helped keep the cup alive. New teams and leagues flourished in the years before World War I. The Montreal Canadiens, established in 1909, were led by goaltender George Vezina to their first Stanley Cup in 1916. It was to be the beginning of one of sport's greatest dynasties. The Seattle Metropolitans of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association won the Cup in 1917, becoming the first U.S.-based team to win the trophy. 2 years later, they would again challenge for the Stanley Cup. But before the series could be completed, tragedy would thwart their efforts.
In 1919, a Spanish influenza epidemic ripped through North America, and Seattle was particularly hard hit. The series was interrupted, and this marked the only year in Stanley Cup play that the Stanley Cup was not awarded. The series was canceled, a number of players were hospitalized.
Joe Hall never left hospital. He died a week later.
A lot has changed since hockey's early days. The equipment, the treatment of injuries, the size of the prize, but not so much the players. In the playoffs, everything gets heightened. Arenas fill fuller, crowds get louder. Everyone talks about the game. It becomes inescapable. All that energy you had before, now you find more. Too tired to play, you play. So Mud Bruneteau in 1934, after 176 minutes, scores the only goal of a game. And injuries too painful, get strapped up, and you find a way. For which hurts more, playing with pain or not at all? But more than that is the action itself. So absorbed in it, so preoccupied by it, pain can't get through. Pain is for tomorrow. The game is the body's best painkiller. Examples of Stanley Cup heroism abound, but one stands out, the story of Bob Baun.
Baun's magic moment came in the 6th game of the 1964 Stanley Cup Finals between Toronto and Detroit.
Gordie Howe was all over the ice that night there, and he kept hitting and shooting pucks, and he hit the goalpost quite a few times, and I always used to say a little prayer when he'd come down the ice.
In the 3rd period, with the score tied 3-3, and the Leafs trailing the series 3-2, Baun was hit on the ankle by a slap shot from Gordie Howe. Obviously injured, he was taken from the ice on a stretcher.
Take him off the ice.
From the moment it happened, Baun knew his ankle was broken. But once he reached the dressing room, he refused to allow his ankle to be x-rayed.
Standing up and giving him a hand as they carry
Instead, he instructed the trainer to tape it tightly.
such tremendous service.
When the teams returned to the ice for overtime, there was number 21, Bob Baun. For Baun, pain was for tomorrow. Then, in less than 2 minutes, it happened.
And is wide. Langlois shoots it off the boards. Bob Baun lets it drive. It goes, scores!
Baun's courageous goal forced Game 7, in which the Leafs captured the Cup. His summer was spent in a cast.
It was a great series all the way through. It could have gone either way, and we were just lucky, that Bobby Baun just fired it, and Terry Sawchuk was screened a little bit on it, and it went off him, and that was it.
Baun's heroism in Games 6 and 7 of the 1964 Finals was matched by that of goaltender Charlie Gardner, who won the Stanley Cup with Chicago in 1934. He played much of that season in great pain and was never able to rid himself of an infection that began with tonsillitis. By the last game of the finals, Gardner, too weak to stand, had to hold on to his goalposts to stay upright. Chicago defeated Detroit in double overtime. 2 months later, Gardner died of a brain hemorrhage that emergency surgery was unable to control. But not all heroes of the Stanley Cup played in pain. Hockey pioneer Lester Patrick scored a cup-winning goal for the Montreal Wanderers in 1906. Then in 1928, as a 44-year-old manager of the New York Rangers, he suited up again and replaced his injured goaltender in Game 2 of the finals. He allowed just one goal as the Rangers defeated the Montreal Maroons 2-1 in overtime. The Patricks have been called hockey's royal family. Lester, his brother Frank, sons Muzz and Lynn, and grandson Craig all have their names inscribed on the cup. Perhaps no player inspired his teammates like Bobby Clarke, the captain of the Philadelphia Flyers during their cup-winning years of 1974 and 1975. Despite being a diabetic, he excelled in tough, high-energy hockey.
You need a good leader to win the championship. And in those years, we had Clarke, and Clarke was a tremendous leader. And I think if you look back and look at the players and ask each individual player what was the really the secret of winning the Stanley Cup, and I think it was persistence. You know, we never gave up.
The Flyers were the ultimate muckers and grinders and were guided by coach Fred Shuro, who was a master at extracting top performances from his players.
The first Stanley Cup, we won at home in Philadelphia, and after the game, then I skated around the ice with Clarke holding the Stanley Cup, which is, people got on the ice, and it was just tremendous.
The Flyers were defending champions when they met the Buffalo Sabres in a 6-game all-expansion final in 1975. Bernie Perron continued his playoff magic, allowing the Sabres a total of just one goal in the 5th and 6th games of the series. Bobby Clarke and his Flyers were back-to-back Stanley Cup champions.
Then getting into the dressing room after and celebrating and drinking out of the Stanley Cup was just, even today, I'm thinking about that's 20 years ago, and it seems like it happened last year. Just incredible feeling.
There have been memorable mistakes in Stanley Cup play. Edmonton Oilers defenseman Steve Smith derailed a dynasty in Game 7 of the 1986 Smythe Division Finals.
Fuhrer did in the second period on Steve Bozak. Oh, they score! Oh, Steve Smith, in attempting to get it out of his own zone, put it in the net!
The Oilers, two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, were out.
The Calgary Flames have done it!
A year later, Edmonton was back. The Oilers needed 7 games to defeat a tough Philadelphia Flyers squad that rallied to tie the series after trailing 3-1. Wayne Gretzky topped all scorers in the finals with 2 goals and 9 assists for 11 points. Gretzky accepted the Stanley Cup on behalf of his teammates. He hoisted the trophy above his head to give the photographers a chance to shoot photos of the captain in the traditional victory pose, and then passed the trophy to Steve Smith. A year after leaving the ice in despair, on this night, Smith was indisputably the happiest man in hockey.
This isn't the real Canadiens' dressing room. It's a replica in hockey's Hall of Fame. But except for the unmistakable smell of a dressing room, this is it. There's no real answer in here why the Canadiens win so often. But sit here as I did and look at these plaques, and you know you're a part of something. You see names appear and disappear. Georges Vezina, Rocket Richard, Jean Béliveau. The faces of Hall of Fame players. Lines from a World War I poem. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. Tradition, success, responsibility. There's a message here. It won't win you the Stanley Cup, but it helps.
The Canadiens moved into the Montreal Forum in 1926. Led by speedy forwards Aurel Joliat and Howie Morenz, they won consecutive Stanley Cup championships in 1930 and 1931. By the mid-1940s, Coach Dick Irvin's attack was led by the punchline of Maurice Rocket Richard, Toe Blake, and Elmer Locke. Richard would be a constant for the team in the 1950s. The Canadians appeared in the Stanley Cup Finals every year from 1951 to 1960, winning 6 times. It was a star-studded team, deep at all positions. In goal, Jacques Plante. And up front, the stylish Jean Béliveau.
Since a young boy, you dreamed to make your life in professional sport, here in Quebec to wear the Canadian uniform, and to find yourself on a Stanley Cup team.
Toe Blake became coach of the Canadians in 1955. Manager Frank Selke provided the players for Blake, who would lead his team to 8 Stanley Cup championships in 13 seasons and an unprecedented 5 in a row from 1956 to 1960. The Canadians' 5-cup dynasty was backstopped by Jacques Plante, a goaltending innovator who was the first to leave his crease to play the puck. In 1960, he would become the first goaltender to appear in the Stanley Cup playoffs wearing a face mask. Rich in offensive talent and capable of pinpoint puck movement, the Canadians developed a devastating power play orchestrated by Big Doug Harvey, a 7-time winner of the Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman. The result was Stanley Cup wins against Detroit in 1956, Boston in 1957 and 58, and Toronto in 1959 and 60. Beginning in 1965, Maurice's brother, Henri Richard, the Pocket Rocket, led a revamped Montreal team to 4 Stanley Cup championships in 5 years.
I'll tell you, I never look for my name. I wish one day I'll look for my name on the cup. I never looked if my name was on it. I hope it is. I'm sure it is.
Richard's 11 Cup wins are the most recorded by any player. Henri's superb career connected the Canadians' championship teams of the 1950s with their glorious squads of the 1970s. Coached by Scotty Bowman, this team had everything. Superb leadership, great goaltending, tough defense, and superstar right winger Guy Lafleur. The result was 4 consecutive Cup championships from 1976 to 1979. And in 3 of those 4 seasons, the Canadians' highlight film is packed with big goals scored against the Boston Bruins. Perhaps the biggest was set up by Larry Robinson, whose pass sprung Lafleur to score the tying goal late in Game 7 of the 1979 semifinals. Robinson, along with Serge Savard and Guy Lapointe, was a wheelhorse on the era's greatest defense corps. This defense, combined with the all-star goaltending of Ken Dryden, made the Canadians the NHL's best at both ends of the ice. In the end, the 1979 finals belonged to a checking specialist, Bob Gainey, who epitomized the Canadians' particular combination of skill, hard work, and team play. It was a rookie-laden Canadians team that won the Stanley Cup in 1986, defeating the Calgary Flames in the finals. Unheralded goaltender Patrick Roy was sensational throughout the playoffs. The Canadians' legendary ability to manufacture wins was never more apparent than in overtime of Game 2 of the finals.
Anything could happen early here. From the face-off, McPhee brings it in with Skurga, and he scores!
The Canadians' 1986 Stanley Cup win was the club's 23rd, eclipsing an all-sports record for most championships, previously shared with baseball's New York Yankees. In the 1992-93 playoffs, with new coach Jacques Demers motivating his troops, the Montreal Canadiens won the Prince of Wales Trophy by defeating the New York Islanders in 5 games.
So the Canadians captain Guy Carbonneau. Stephen Solomon represents.
They met the Los Angeles Kings in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Kings won the series opener 4-1, a game which featured great goaltending by the Kings' Kelly Rudy and the Canadians' Patrick Roy.
DiPietro's in front of the net. Score! Off Gretzky. Mark on the third. Gretzky centered one. Goal!
Yari Kuri's goal in the third period gave LA a 3-1 lead. And Wayne Gretzky sealed the win with an empty net goal in the final seconds.
But here's Sandstrom. Empty net. Gretzky sharp. And there it is.
The Kings were in control of Game 2 as well, leading 2-1 with less than 2 minutes remaining in the game. However, Kings defenseman Marty McSorley was penalized for using an illegal stick, setting up a Montreal power play.
And a penalty to Montreal if it's fair. And Marty McSorley, if he uses an illegal stick, which he did.
Jacques Demers waiting for this moment. 1:45 remaining. 2-1 Los Angeles. Side.
Defenseman Eric Desjardins scored to tie the match and then won it for the Habs with his third goal of the game in overtime, the Canadiens' 8th overtime victory of the playoffs. Game 3 went into overtime as well, and Montreal continued its incredible victory streak by winning the game on Jean Leclerc's goal just 34 seconds into the extra frame.
The Canadiens win the game in overtime again.
In Game 4, the Kings rebounded from a 2-goal deficit.
Bob in a big save. Sorley is showing patience. The shot in. Gretzky around the net. Comes out, centering back.
Marty McSorley scored the tying goal in the dying seconds of the second period to force the third consecutive overtime game of the series.
He's in there. And can't get a shot. Rudy beat it up, got it down. But anyway, it's in the books. Rudy was beaten. Lehman, centered it, score! Now.
Patrick Roy was outstanding in the extra period, stopping 10 shots before John Leclerc scored his second straight overtime winner to become the first player to score back-to-back overtime winners in the Cup Finals since the Rangers' Don Bones Raleigh in 1940. Montreal won Game 5 on single markers by Patrick LeBeau and Kirk Muller, and 2 goals by Rocky DiPietro.
3-1 Montreal. And a 2-on-1 right after it. Dion coming in. DiPietro scores!
The Canadiens won their 24th Stanley Cup title.
The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Patrick Roy became the second goalie in league history to win the Conn Smythe Trophy twice by leading all goalies with 16 wins and a 2.13 goals against average.
Trophy has just made the announcement for the whole world that the Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup. And here's
The great motivator, Coach Jacques Demers, won the Cup in his first year behind the Habs bench as Captain Guy Carbonneau and veteran Denis Savard hoisted the Cup for the Montreal fans, which included the legendary Maurice Richard. The Canadiens, who won an NHL record 10 overtime games in a row on their way to the championship, paraded the cup around the ice surface of the Montreal Forum and posed for the traditional on-ice celebration picture.
Let's get together, boys, because without being together, we might not be here. Here they are.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans in the United States.
Reaching that big, broad audience that might never in its life see a game in person. The Stanley Cup has never been confined just to arenas. 100 years ago, dispatches were sent from rinkside in Morse code to telegraph offices, its messages transcribed onto chalkboards for the big crowds that would gather outside. Still before radio, Toronto's first Stanley Cup contender, the Wellingtons, traveled west to play the Winnipeg Victorias. A signal was arranged. From Toronto's railway station, a steam whistle would sound. 2 blasts for a win, 3 for a loss. The fans waited. Finally, 1 blast, then another, then a third. The Wellingtons had lost. By the early 1930s, hockey's radio age had begun. The game's great voice was Foster Hewitt. He stood, perched in the gondola, as he called it, high above the ice in Toronto's new Maple Leaf Gardens. In darkened parlors and kitchens across Canada, families stared at a big wooden box, at a burnt orange aura at the images of Hewitt's words. It was during these radio years the Toronto Maple Leafs became the NHL's new dynasty.
It was Conn Smythe who built the Leafs and Maple Leaf Gardens, their famed arena in downtown Toronto. Smythe's teams were tough. He demanded it. And aided by assistant manager Frank Selke, he proved to be a shrewd judge of talent, acquiring King Clancy from Ottawa for $35,000 and 2 players. By the time Maple Leaf Gardens opened in 1931, Smythe and Selke had revamped the Leafs lineup, combining veterans and young players in a way that would prove to be a Maple Leaf trademark in years to come. The Leafs were built around Clancy and another defenseman, Hap Day, and around the kid line, a forward combination made up of Charlie Conacher, Joe Primo, and Busher Jackson. The Leafs won the Stanley Cup in 1932, sweeping the New York Rangers. Turk Broda became the Leafs' starting goaltender in 1936. He played every game of the 1942 finals, which saw the Leafs come back to win after trailing 3-0. This goal by Pete Langell put the Leafs ahead to stay in Game 7. Broda served in the Canadian Armed Forces in World War II, so the Leafs went with Frank Ulcers McCool, who recorded an unprecedented 3 consecutive shutouts in the 1945 finals. In the late 40s, the Leafs became the first NHL team to win 3 consecutive Stanley Cup championships. They won again in 1951 on this overtime goal by Bill Barilko. Every game of the finals was decided in overtime. Barilko's goal has become a hockey legend.
Bill Barilko was a promising defenseman, a really handsome, good-looking guy, almost a movie star type idol. He was called Hollywood Bill, and he was just on the verge of breaking into the top tier of defensemen in the NHL in 1951. That was Bill Barilko's last instant as an NHL player. Later that summer, he went off in a small airplane on a fishing trip into northern Ontario. The plane went down and he was never seen again. The body wasn't found for years.
Toronto Maple Leafs come right back again. Over the line, Armstrong to Horton. Over to Duff. He turns it to the score. Picked up.
The Leafs again dominated the NHL in the early 60s, led by tough-minded coach Punch Imlach. Goaltender Johnny Bower was 37 years old when he won his first Stanley Cup in 1962.
It was a long time coming for me, yes. It took quite a while for me to achieve something that I always dreamed of, having my name engraved on a Stanley Cup, and it was really a great thrill when that happened.
Bower's puck-stopping skills earned him the nickname of the China Wall. He faced Terry Sawchuk in goal for Detroit in both the 1963 and 64 finals, which were won by the Leafs. It was 1967, Canada's centennial year, when Toronto next reached the finals. Sawchuk and Bower were now teammates, as Imlach and a veteran lineup went on to upset the Montreal Canadiens in 6 games. The Leafs won the Stanley Cup with solid goaltending performances and the tireless work of playoff MVP Dave Keon. This unexpected win was the Leafs' 11th